In the high-stakes arena of political discourse, where every word and gesture is scrutinized, Karoline Leavitt, the recently appointed White House press secretary, found herself in the eye of the storm. It was a chilly morning in Washington, D.C., and the buzz around the city was palpable as Karoline prepared for her scheduled appearance on one of the most watched morning talk shows in America, the Morning Brew. The host of the show, Jessica Marnier, was known for her sharp wit and often controversial questioning style, which endeared her to her liberal audience but made her a formidable opponent to her guests with differing views. The stage was set for a riveting exchange, with millions across the country tuning in, their interest piqued by the promise of sparks flying between two powerful women known for their uncompromising stands. As Karoline sat across Jessica in the sleek, modern set of the Morning Brew, she felt the weight of her role. Representing not just the administration but also President Donald Trump himself, she knew her every word carried weight. The interview began cordially enough, with questions about policy decisions and the administration's recent foreign visits. However, the atmosphere shifted palpably as Jessica's questions took a more personal turn. "Secretary Leavitt," Jessica began, her tone deceptively calm. "Many critics of President Trump are concerned about his recent comments on immigration. They argue it's not just policy but also rhetoric that shapes public perception. How do you defend these remarks that many, including myself, find not only troubling but deeply offensive?" Karoline had anticipated this line of questioning. Her response was measured and firm. "Jessica, the president has always been clear about his stance on immigration. It's about securing our borders and ensuring the safety of all Americans. While I understand that his words can be polarizing, the intention behind them is to enforce our laws and protect our citizens." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Jessica, sensing the tension, leaned in. "But doesn't this rhetoric contribute to a divisive atmosphere? Can you honestly say you support these statements?" The question hung in the air, a challenge that was more of a provocation. Karoline's eyes narrowed slightly, a flash of determination crossing her face as she prepared her response. This was her moment and she knew it. Karoline took a brief moment to compose herself, aware that her response would resonate beyond the confines of the television studio. "Jessica," she began, her voice steady and clear, "the role of the president is not to appease every critique, but to make difficult decisions that benefit the country as a whole. Regarding his rhetoric, we are not here to police words, but to implement policies that safeguard the interests of the American people." Jessica smirked slightly, an edge creeping into her voice. "Safeguarding by alienating allies and citizens alike?" She countered quickly, pushing her guest further. "Is that the image of America we want to project?" The tension was palpable, the studio audience now completely absorbed by the unfolding drama. Karoline felt the pressure mounting but remained undeterred. She leaned forward, her response cutting through the charged atmosphere. "America is a robust nation, built on the foundation of free speech and strong opinions. The president's approach may be direct, but it is honest and focused on action. I stand by his methods because they are what brought him to the White House, and it is what the American people voted for." The words hung heavily between them. Jessica, momentarily taken aback by Karoline's fervor, quickly regained her composure. She was not done yet. "So, you see no issue with how the words from the highest office might incite division or even violence?" Karoline's next move was crucial. She knew that her words would be dissected and analyzed, potentially becoming headline material by the afternoon. With a calm demeanor, she replied, "There is a difference, Jessica, between inciting and inspiring. The president inspires action, secures our nation, and uplifts our economy. The real issue would be if we, as a country, chose an action due to fear of controversy." The studio was silent, the audience and even the crew captivated by the exchange. Jessica paused, perhaps reassessing her approach, then decided to shift gears, moving on to another contentious issue. As the interview transitioned to other topics, the undercurrent of tension remained. Karoline, however, had found her stride, confidently addressing each pointed question with a blend of poise and assertiveness. It seemed for a moment that the earlier confrontation might be set aside in favor of a more traditional political discourse. That is, until Jessica decided to steer the conversation back to a more personal confrontation. "Secretary Leavitt, let's talk about something a bit more personal, if we may," Jessica said, her voice taking on a softer, yet somehow more dangerous tone. "There have been numerous comments online about your unprecedented rise to your current role. Some suggest that your loyalty to President Trump rather than your qualifications landed you the job of White House press secretary. How do you respond to those who question your credentials?" The studio audience murmured, sensing the provocative nature of the inquiry. Karoline's expression remained unfazed, but her eyes flashed with a mixture of indignation and resolve. She understood now that Jessica was playing to her audience, attempting to undermine her on a national platform. "My qualifications speak for themselves, Jessica," Karoline retorted, her voice firm. "I have dedicated my career to public service, working tirelessly in various capacities within the government before being appointed as the White House press secretary. My role requires not only a deep understanding of policy, but also the ability to communicate effectively, traits I have demonstrated consistently throughout my career." Jessica nodded, her smile tight, not quite reaching her eyes. "So, you attribute your appointment solely to your professional merits?" "Absolutely," Karoline affirmed. "And while I respect the right of the press and the public to question their leaders and their representatives, I also believe in the integrity of my work and the decisions made by this administration." The conversation then took a dramatic turn as Jessica, perhaps sensing that her attempts to unnerve Karoline were failing, changed tactics. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Then let me be direct, Secretary Leavitt. Given the controversies surrounding President Trump, how do you justify your defense of him to the American people, especially to those who feel alienated or threatened by his policies and statements?" Karoline paused, realizing that this was the crux of her appearance. This was not merely an interview. It was a trial by fire, and her answers could define her tenure as press secretary. In that moment, with the nation watching, Karoline Leavitt understood the gravity of her response. It wasn't just her credibility on the line, but also that of the entire administration. She took a deep breath, her expression composed yet resolute. "Jessica, to justify my defense of the president, I don't need to look further than the results his policies have achieved. We're seeing economic growth, improved national security, and stronger international standings. My role as press secretary is not to offer personal opinions, but to communicate the objectives and successes of this administration, which I believe in strongly." Jessica seemed ready for this, her reply sharp and quick. "And what of those who suffer under these policies? What about those who feel that this economic growth has bypassed them or that their security is compromised, not enhanced?" Karoline's reply was immediate, her tone impassioned yet controlled. "In any nation as large and diverse as ours, not every policy will please everyone. However, the overarching goal of any policy under this administration is the greater good. It's about making tough decisions that might not be popular with everyone, but are necessary for the nation's overall welfare." The air in the studio was thick with tension, the audience hanging on every word, realizing that they were witnessing a rare, unguarded moment of political theater. Jessica, perhaps trying to regain control of the narrative, pushed further, her tone slightly more aggressive. "Secretary Leavitt, there are those who would argue that the greater good you mention feels very selective. Are you saying that some Americans need to accept their sacrifices as necessary?" Karoline nodded, acknowledging the weight of the question. "No sacrifice should be taken lightly, Jessica, but leadership is about vision. It's about steering the ship through stormy waters, knowing when to hold course and when to adjust. President Trump has a vision for America that involves tough choices, but these choices are made with the intention of securing a prosperous and secure future for all Americans." As Karoline articulated her defense, it became clear that she was not just defending policies but presenting a case for a type of leadership that believes in decisive action over appeasement. Jessica paused, taking in Karoline's answers, and then asked, "So, you're standing firm on your support for President Trump and his vision?" Karoline met Jessica's gaze directly, her response unequivocal. I stand firm, Jessica. I believe in this president and his vision for America, and I will continue to communicate this belief to the American people. As the interview concluded, the atmosphere in the studio was charged, the audience and viewers at home digesting the intensity of the exchange they had just witnessed. Karoline Leavitt stood up from her chair, her demeanor calm but her mind racing with the implications of her words. Jessica Marnier, ever the professional, thanked her for her time with a courteous nod, the underlying tension still palpable as the cameras ceased rolling. The reaction across America was immediate and polarized. Clips from the interview went viral, trending on social media platforms and becoming fodder for both news outlets and dinner table conversations. Supporters of President Trump lauded Karoline for her steadfastness and clarity, seeing her as a beacon of truth in a sea of media bias. Conversely, her critics dissected her every word, challenging her views and questioning the administration's policies even more fiercely. Amid this whirlwind, Karoline's personal resolve was tested. The public scrutiny was intense, with her professional life under a microscope and her personal beliefs questioned. However, she found solace in the support from her colleagues and the private words of encouragement from the president himself, who was pleased with her performance and her unwavering support for his administration. In the days following the interview, Karoline took to the podium at the White House with a renewed sense of purpose. She addressed the press with confidence, tackling questions with the same directness she had shown on the Morning Brew. The experience had not only solidified her role as press secretary, but had also deepened her understanding of the national divide and the responsibility she bore in bridging it. The broader impact of Karoline's confrontation with Jessica Marnier resonated beyond mere political debate. It sparked discussions about the nature of political discourse in America, the role of the media in shaping public perception, and the complexities of leadership in tumultuous times. Colleges debated her methods and ethics classes analyzed her justifications, using them as case studies in the balance between public good and individual harm. As weeks turned into months, Karoline's tenure continued to be defined by that pivotal moment. She became more than just a spokesperson. She was now a symbol of a particular brand of political courage, admired by some and reviled by others, but respected by many for her commitment to her convictions. Karoline's story, sparked by that heated exchange on a popular morning show, underscored the enduring American dialogue between power and principle, a narrative as old as the nation itself, continually evolving but always rooted in the unending quest for a more perfect union.